Hello, wonderful people. So today I'll be teaching us how to take the body measurement for a basic gown, for a basic bodice. So first thing you want to do is to ensure that your client is putting on a fitted clothes. A fitted clothes, not a free clothes. And another thing, you want to make sure they are wearing a good bra, like a fitted bra. Not that they will come and take measurements with a loose bra, and when they are coming for their outfit, they will now come with a poorly fitted bra. So let's get started. So to get the true waist, we are going to be getting a rope. You can use another tape rope, you can use a bias, you can use anything as a rope to get the true waist. So what I'm going to do now is to tell my client to tilt towards the side a bit like this. To get the true waist, you tell your client to tilt like this. Please tilt to the side. Okay, so this place where the waist is going inside, when your client tilts, the place that is going inside, that is folding, that is your true waist. So that is when you grab with your rope and you tie it. You can stand straight, please. That is when you tie it. Please tie it loosely. Tie it loosely. That is just to get your true waist. So you are going to be starting with the measurements now. Note that if you want to measure your clients, you have to stand beside them, not in front of them. You stand beside them this way. So let's get started. You are going to be looking for the midpoint of the collarbone. This is the neck bone. So this is the midpoint. You are going to get the midpoint, and that's where all your measurements will start from. So you are going to be taking the gown length. This gown length depends on what your clients want. Anyway, they want it to stop at. So you decide that. So for your waist now, you can decide to measure your half length. The main reason why we are tying this is to get the true waist, so that you measure the back waist separately, you measure the front waist separately. You know the bust is here. The bust is making this front half length to be longer than that of the back. The bust is making this one to go up, and the back, we don't have anything at the back. So there is going to be a difference between your front half length and your back half length. So let's get into it. So for this waist, you can decide to use the upper part of the rope that you are tying as your waist, or you can decide to use the underneath. Like you can use the upper part of the rope, or you use the down part. But whichever one you decide to use for the front, note that that is what you are going to be using for the back. So for the front half length, I have 15. I have 15 on the rope. You can decide to bring it under and use 16, but for me, I am going to be using 15. So our front waist is 15. Our shoulder to nipple is 9. So you measure that. You measure your nipple to nipple. For this person, it is 7. You are going to measure your under bust. For your under bust, you are going to lift it up this way. The main reason why we measure under bust and round under bust is when we want to make bustiers and all of that. But for the basic bodice gown, you can decide not to measure your round under bust, because we don't really need it, because we are not making a bustier. So I'm going to measure the bust. So I'm staying by this side. You measure your bust circumference and put one finger in it like so. So that's your bust circumference. So now you are going to be measuring your across bust. You know the bust is bigger in the front, and at the back we don't have anything. So you should not be dividing your bust into 4. You should not be dividing it into 4, because this place will be bigger than that of the back. So I'm going to show us how to measure the across bust. So you take your tape measure, you take it here and measure back to the side. And I have 16.5. 16.5. So we've gotten the front half length to be 15. So I'm going to be measuring the back half length now. So you can see that there is always a difference. You see? So this is 14. So this is 14. This is 14 inches. So for the hip, for the round under bust, we don't really need the round under bust for these basic bodies, but we are going to be, this is just going to be like a bonus. So for your round under bust, you are going to measure it very fitted, because the reason why you are measuring round under bust is so that the person will not wear bra when you make a bustier for them. So you are going to measure it very tightly. So after that, we go ahead to measure our waist. So this is 23, we have waist 23. We go ahead to measure the distance between the waist and the hip line. The distance between the waist and the hip line. And the distance, you are going to place your tape from the upper part. If you use the upper part for your half length, you place the tape there. Or if you use the lower part, you place the tape. So I use the upper part. I'm going to be placing my tape on the upper part. And you look for where the hip is fuller. Please shift a bit. Okay. So you get the place where the hip looks fuller, and this is it. This is where the hip looks fuller. So the distance between our waist and hip line is 8. So you note that, and you measure the hip circumference. The hip circumference is 32.5. So you are the same way you measured your across bust, you can call it front bust. We are going to be measuring the across back or across hip. You know, the hip is more pronounced at the back, so you should not divide the hip by 4 too. You should not divide it by 4. So you take your tape measure, you measure at the fuller part from one side, like so. You place your tape on one side of the hip and measure it to the other side. And I have 17 inches here. I have 17 inches. So you are going to be measuring the back. Some people call it back, some people call it shoulder. So you look at the middle point. This is the middle point. You get the middle point, and to know where your measurement will stop, you look for the bone that is here, the bone that is at the shoulder. For some people, the bone might not be obvious, so for you to get it, you tell your client to raise their arm like this, and wherever the place that goes in, you know that that's where the bone is. So you measure it like so, from here to here, to that point where the bone is. So our back is 7 inches. 7 inches. And from there you measure your sleeve length. To measure the sleeve length, you know, some people used to measure the sleeve length marking it straight like this, and when they eventually make the clothes, they might notice that the sleeve is jumping up, like it might not get there anymore. So the best way to do it, you tell your clients to place their arm in akimbo this way, and you measure like so. You measure like this. So this is it, 24. That way it will not jump. So you measure the elbow too. And now let's go over to mark the wrist. So for some people, you can measure your wrist like this. This is 6 inches. But you know, sometimes when you measure this place, it might not enter through this hand. So sometimes you can measure your wrist at this side. It depends on what your client wants. You know, if you measure your wrist, you can measure your wrist here so that it will enter freely. But you know that when you do that, once it gets to this place, it might look loose, it might be loose. So you ask your clients which one do they want. If they want you to mark it at the wrist like this, or you make it free and mark at this place. That depends totally on your client. So we are going to be measuring the biceps. So this is the bicep. The fuller part of your arm is your bicep. So instead of marking your bicep like this, the right way to mark it, you place it like this and tilt it upward like this. You tilt it upward like this. Instead of marking round, you place it upward a little bit and get your. So that will be all for this measurement. Since we are making a basic bodice, you measure, let me run over it again. You measure your half length. You can decide to place your tape on the upper part or the down part. You measure your shoulder to nipple. You measure your shoulder to under bust, your nipple to nipple. You measure your across bust, half of this across bust. You measure your hip. You measure your round hip circumference. You measure the across back, your hip, half of the back hip. You go ahead and measure the difference between the waistline and the hip line. You measure the difference because we are going to be needing all of this while drafting our basic bodies. You measure your back half length too. We have 14 here while we have 15 at the front. For some people it can be 2 inches. It can be 2 inches, it can be 1.5 depending on your client. Note that it is not the same for everybody, and that difference is what we are going to be using for our bust. That is what we'll be using for the bust. That some people will be like, okay, if I do it separately, I measure 15 here, I measure back here, how is it going to rhyme? Note that that is what we are going to be using for the bust. That. So the back, I measure the back, I measure the sleeve, the biceps, and all of that. So thank you for watching. We have come to the end of the basic bodice gown measurement. See you in my next video. Thank you.